Hey, I'm your host, Bree Wild, and this is Marquee Memories. Here we sit down with your favorite artists to talk about their top concert memories as fans. Today's guest is a singer, songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, and host of Canada's Got Talent. She spent 2024 and some of this year as Shania Twain's lead guitarist, and now she's veering into the pop lane with her own EP, Fence Sitter. Lindsay Ell, welcome.
Thank you.
What brings you to LA today?
Talking about my brand new EP that is about to come out, and I'm so excited about this collection of songs. I feel like sonically, as a musician and a songwriter, I'm finally getting to make music that really feels representative of where my heart is and where my brain is, and the music that I listen to and love so much. And as an artist, that feels really good to sort of align those things, you know?
How did you get here? How did you get to the point where you're like, oh, this is the kind of music I want to make? Like, how did you, because I'm sure you've had people in your, chirping in your ears for years,
Yeah, I mean, I've been playing shows ever since I was 10 years old. So I grew up on the stage, and the stage, compared to anywhere else, really felt like home to me ever since I was little. I started working with Randy Bachman from like BTO and the Guess Who when I was 13 years old. And Randy was the one who, introduced me to Jimi Hendrix and Stevie Ray Vaughan and Eric Clapton. And so as like a young little blonde white teenage girl, I would sit in my bedroom and like be learning all of this like blues, jazz, rock guitar. And then I moved to Nashville, 15 years ago now, wanting to be a female John Mayer essentially, and wanting to make a record that's like pop but very muso and has like long guitar solos. And I got offered a country record deal, and I was like, well, it's close enough. I mean, country music is a very wide genre, and it's close enough. I mean, if Sheryl Crow were to come out today, she
might be, yes,
maybe be country. And so I just said yes and ran, and truly running was what happened. I after signing my record deal, I got my first world tour. I was opening up for the band Perry, and like playing all over Europe and all over the States and all over Canada. And I was so excited. And yet, because I had a worldwide tour, we needed to release something to radio. And so I just sort of hit the pavement like real fast and went on my first radio tour, and then had an album coming out. And a decade flew by pretty much. And I was so happy getting to play shows. It's my favorite thing to do in my whole life. Like nothing brings me joy than live music. And being able to share my songs on stage. And then after a decade into, chasing country,
go
music and just being so like deeply wound in that lane, I just started asking myself questions of like, okay, I'm on these festival bills, like in between acts that are nothing like me. And even on my first few radio tours, I would have program directors come up to me and be like, Lindsay, you're so cool, but you're not country. And I'm like, well, I know, but I'm here, and my songs were always like just enough country. My first record was called The Project, and it was sort of like bluesy, but had enough like question marks, like could this be country enough? It kind of fit. And then my second album, Heart Theory, I got to work with Dan Huff, who as a guitar player was like one of my idols. And he's just the nicest guy, and also Mr. Country Radio. And so I felt like I was really trying to chase the country radio thing and working with the best of the best doing it. And after chasing that, goalpost, I guess you could say, for a long time, and even getting to ring the number one bell, for so long, I would have these people say, Lindsay, you just have to get a song through, and then you can kind of do what you want. And I'm like, oh, okay, as an artist and as a songwriter, that sounds so freeing. And so I think I was just trying to follow the guidelines that somebody told me what I needed to do. And you just need 3 minutes. You just need one song.
Yeah.
And then it changes everything. And then you can make whatever music you want to make. And so I think I was just waiting for that moment for a long time. And I just kept waiting, and I kept waiting. And after getting a number one on country radio that I thought was like the thing that needed to happen. Then I just found out that, well, nothing changes after that. Actually, when you accomplish, an incredible goal, like getting a #1 on the radio is wild. And my little girl self knew that she wanted to do that, but had no idea if she could or how it was going to happen. And then you do that just to realize that it doesn't really mean anything. All it means is you just need to figure out how to do it again.
It doesn't give you permission from there on to...
it at least didn't feel that way for me, that like the doors open and then all of a sudden I could go into the studio and pick up whatever instrument I wanted and, make a 1975 leaning record.
Yeah.
And so I went into the CEO of my record label and told him I needed him to let me go. And it was the scariest day of my life, I think. I was like, am I shooting myself in the foot, asking out of my record deal? And country music has introduced me to so many wonderful fans that I'm so grateful for and who have followed me along and who are now part of my world and my life. But me choosing to want to like follow this calling inside my heart is this dangerous, because it felt so dangerous. And the past 3 years have been so wild and so terrifying and so exciting. I feel like as a songwriter, I've never felt more liberated from like taking some of those risky decisions and changing my entire team, like clean slating a lot of things that like gave me comfort and made me feel like I was somebody, which what does that sentence even mean,
Yeah.
I think that oftentimes making you feel like somebody is something that comes from here far more than it comes from anywhere else. And yet I was so tied to like so many figments of my career and of my life to make me feel like I was somebody. And I chose to walk away from all of it. And I'm like, what are you doing, Lindsay? Like, what? Do you have a plan? I didn't really have a plan. I just knew that in my heart, I couldn't pretend to be who I wasn't. Not that I was in the past, but I just felt like creatively, all of a sudden I was trying to make music that was going to be successful compared to trying to make music
that you wanted to make.
Yeah, who was what I wanted to say and how I wanted to sound and were things that excited me. I wanted to be able to sit in the studio and be like, I cannot wait to release this song out into the world because I'm so proud of it. And I think that there's a place where art chases commerciality and there's a place that art is just art. And ideally, it's when those two things cross, sometimes when you can hit magic. But I think I was way too deep in this column of like trying to make art that was going to be successful. And my favorite songwriters and my favorite musicians, I don't think created
for that reason,
solely in that column.
Yeah.
And so I just knew I needed to make some changes. And I do believe that some of the scariest decisions in your life give you the sweetest rewards and take you to the sweetest places. And so I was like, regardless of what's going to happen and regardless of how I need to figure this whole thing out, I knew I was making the right decision for me. And so I had to walk away from everything that was comfortable, my entire team.
Wow. You did it, though. Scary, but you did it.
I mean, I feel like I'm in the process.
Yeah,
People are like, so
still,
when did you feel you made it? And I'm like,
when
am I going to make it? I don't know. I feel so grateful that I get to call this my job and I get to play music and write songs and tour the world for a living. And I hope I will never take that for granted. But I feel like there's a long road ahead.
These lyrics for this upcoming EP, I feel like they're a little more confessional, they're a little more soul bearing. Is there a moment before you put it out in the world where you're like, oh, here goes? Like,
yeah, a few songs actually on this EP. Because again, when I was in that prior world of feeling like I needed to write certain subject matters about like beer and trucks, which I don't even really like either of those two things. And so I'm like, okay, well, if I was to really write about things that matter to me, what would that be? And I love songwriting so much because I feel like songwriting is therapy. And I ask questions when I write songs. And usually come up with really interesting answers. And so I felt like I just needed to start asking some of those questions publicly and releasing some of these songs. Writing songs about my journey with sexual assault or me getting diagnosed with an eating disorder. I feel like having put songs like that out into the world, I see such a response from fans of like, thank you for writing this song. Thank you for being so honest. I feel exactly the same. And you've inspired me to go get therapy or talk to my family or reach out to a loved one. And when I get messages like that, it just reminds me that music is this like connective force that has this way of bringing strangers together on like other sides of the world. And so I just can't, I need to continuously remind myself that I can't forget that. And so sitting down to write this Fence Sitter EP, I really wanted to be as vulnerable as I could. And of course, topics like finding love, as incredible and beautiful and viscerally exciting as that is, and losing love, as difficult and heartbreaking and completely 180ing your entire perspective is. I feel those are both universal topics, but I also wanted to talk about things like a song like Magic. I talk about this roller coaster ride that has been my career and the feeling of having a dream and really pursuing it and wanting to believe in that like thing within you that's like, I know I can do this. I have no idea how, but I know I can do this. And there's like this momentum in that belief that feels very magical to me. And I also feel that momentum really shows up in your world or personifies itself in like little tiny moments compared to big moments. Like I often feel the magic in like the tiniest things, like how beautiful this mug is. And compared to like, getting a number one.
Right.
I feel like magic is felt in all of like the tiny little Legos that get placed beside
Is
each
this
other.
song also like a reminder, like on a day when you're not feeling it, you're like, oh, wait, I wrote this to remind myself that there's magic in these things.
100%. I write most of my songs to remind myself things that like, Lindsay, you thought this once and you should probably think it again. And so, I think when anybody listens to magic, they can get reminded of like the magic that they have within them that only they can access.
Yeah. What about Good Guy? Good Guy is seemingly a beautiful song, but it's kind of a little...
I love writing sangers. They're like sad bangers. It's like a sad song
love that.
like makes you want to dance.
Yeah.
Good Guy is a song that I've wanted to write for a very, very, very long time. I think that sometimes in life we go through things that we aren't able to talk about or aren't able to share a side of the story. And I feel that there's such an empowerment. There's such like a taking your power back to really step into your side and being able to voice that however you can. I feel like you're able to access like a newfound confidence that you would have never been able to feel if you didn't take that step into your own side of the story. Right. And so Good Guy is a lot of me taking my power back and being like, you know what? I had a perspective of this whole thing too. And then the title track of the EP, Fence Sitter, is about a question that has been looping around in my mind of whether or not I want to be a mother or not. And I remember when I was a little girl, I would ask myself this question and had no idea. And in my 20s, I asked myself that question and it got a little bit louder. And then when I turned 30, it was so blaringly loud in my ear. And I still don't know. I still have no idea. And all of my friends are married. A lot of my friends, most of my friends are married or having their first, second, third babies. And I'm like, did I miss the point where you're supposed to have this figured out yet? And as an artist or as somebody who travels a lot for their job, it's just not as easy logistically to have a kid and think that it's going to be
just part of your
open road. And some of my dear female artist friends have had kids and are such badasses and make it look so easy. And I know it's possible, but I also am so confused at what I really want. I feel like I'm in this really exciting part of my career where I'm finally getting to make music that feels so aligned. And yet, like I said, I feel like I'm starting over again in a lot of cases. And so there's a very exciting road ahead, and I want to be able to jump right into that, like 2 feet. But then there's the other side of the fence that as a woman, we have a biological
limited
clock.
Amount of time.
And limited amount of time to make this decision, which is so unfair.
So unfair. Why can men have children until they're like 80?
I know. Men can have children.
Someone can fix that.
They don't
Can someone get on that, please?
They don't have to make up their mind.
Right.
And as a woman, I don't want to have regrets never knowing what that feels like. And yet I'm so loving my life right now that I know I'm not ready yet. And what if I'm not ready yet until the point where then I can't physically have a kid.
And it must be scary to sing about that. Just sing about like the in between. You're like, I don't know, I'm not here. I mean, obviously that's what fence sitter means, but I
think being vulnerable is scary, but in a beautiful way. I think that being raw and overly vulnerable helps open this space where all emotions are welcome.
Yeah.
And I've just felt that from fans when they hear songs like that or they read lyrics like that, it makes them feel less alone and it makes them feel more connected to it. I think that the more specific I write a song on how I'm feeling, the actual more it connects with somebody. It's kind of counterintuitive in that way.
But I can't off the top of my head think of another song that addresses that subject, Like I can't. If you can't find it, maybe you have to write it.
I mean, at least that's what I've found in my own life when I have these questions that I do love so many songwriters for like reaching really complicated topics. And I just know in my head, that's how I start to figure something out is I write a song about it.
Yes. All right, we could talk about this forever, I feel like, but let's get into your concert memories.
Yes.
Starting with your first ever, which was
Metallica, Saddledome, Calgary, December 2008. It's crazy to say my first concert ever was Metallica, but it's so true. And 2008, the world just seemed so big and wild. And I had been playing piano. I just had started playing guitar. The first lick I learned on guitar was Stairway to Heaven. And then probably like within the next 10 licks I learned was Metallica. And so I was just so enthralled by like cool things that you could play on guitar. And a kid I went to school with, Garrett was his name, his dad had a box at the Saddledome and decided to bring both of us to this show. And so his box was one of the higher boxes. So sometimes there are like 2 rows of boxes, right, in an arena. And so we were in the high box, and I thought it was so cool because we like went up the elevator and walked up all these stairs, and then we're at the very top of the arena, so we could see all of the people in all of the seats. And I was just so enthralled with the energy. And then, because we got there super early because we just wanted to take in everything.
Just excited.
By the time Metallica hit the stage, the pot smoke was so thick that you couldn't even see Lars's drums. Like you couldn't see them. You could definitely hear them. But I was just like, why is there so much smoke in the arena? And now looking back on it, I'm like, this is the perfect first concert for me to be like really eyes open into how exciting the world is. And I remember hearing James Hetfield play like the intro to Nothing Else Matters. And my brain was just like, whoa, that is so cool. Like these worlds of artistry and songwriting and musicianship and all of that magic can come together in these messages that, these 4 dudes have like sold their soul so much into crafting. And then thousands and thousands of people can sing them together at one time. And I think I was just so captivated by that moment. And now it's kind of funny that Metallica was my first concert because I wouldn't say like I listened to a lot of metal at all, actually. But as a band, I respect Metallica so much. They care so much about every single thing they do, about everything that they release, about all of their fan experiences. it's amazing to see them, have been a successful band for as long as they have been and still continue to care about every single piece of their business. Like their box sets that they release now, like some of the coolest things are in some of these box sets. And I'm like, is the world looking at how cool Metallica is? Like how they keep like set lists and little pieces of paper that were traveling with them when the band was on tour, like making that record. I'm like, do other bands watch how cool Metallica is?
Someone's taking notes.
How they care so much about every aspect. So I'm very proud and I'm very happy that Metallica was my first concert ever because they're the perfect band to learn from.
There's a lot of fans of them on setlist just because how much they care about their set list and how they make each one different next time they're in the city. That like they care. They could phone it in by now, but they could totally phone it in.
Oh my gosh,
they do not.
100%. And thank God for Setlist.fm because there are so many bands that are like Metallica that really craft their world and craft their show to each venue and each night. And as an artist, I'm so happy that I was introduced to that world very, very early of being like, oh, wow, you can make this as unique and as special as you want it to be.
Did you ask to go to that Metallica show?
Yeah, I remember Garrett, my buddy from school, was like, "Hey, my dad, has tickets," and I'm like, "Oh my God, could we go?" And so I remember just being so excited, and a lot of my musical experiences when I was that young was to just say yes. Like I always wanted to go see whatever it is, any genre, any show. I just wanted to learn. And then when I got into like my teens and 20s, I think I was so busy playing shows. And touring so hard. I mean, I think my craziest year was in 2019 and I was gone like 185 days. I played 235 shows in 1 year. Like I was just so busy that I quite literally did not have a lot of time to go see shows. And now I'm kind of back in the chapter of where my musical life and love started, of where I'm obsessed about going to see live shows. And I love seeing the greats be great and do it really well and do it really special. I love seeing live music.
Did you ever see Metallica again after that?
Yeah, I've gotten to see them a few times. They were just in Nashville this year, actually. My boyfriend is a huge Metallica fan, so I think he was really happy when he found out they were my first concert. But it's, like I said, it's so cool to see them at this level of their career, and they've been doing this for so long, and they still care about everything, and they have such a beautifully crafted experience in their whole show.
They do it in the round.
Yeah. We got to watch it from the snake pit in the middle of their stage in the round, and just even being really observant to how they craft their shows in a stadium.
Mm-hmm.
There's 60,000 people coming to a show. That's a lot of bodies to move in and out of one place, and they're just very intentional about everything from what's in the lobby to the music playing to how they always start their shows to the directions of everything when you have like a snake pit wristband. And I just admire them so much for that. Like it's cool to see somebody care when honestly they don't have to.
Right. Yeah. They set the bar pretty high for you then at being your first show.
I mean, I know, right? Definitely. But I'm grateful for that. I love high bars.
Nice. Let's go to Coldplay.
Coldplay, Soldier Field, 2022. I had always wanted to see Coldplay. I have loved that band for so long and have loved all of their albums. And for whatever reason, I just never had gotten to a show of theirs. And I remember somebody asked me like, so what are some shows you like have always wanted to go but haven't seen? And I was like Coldplay, Bruno Mars, Ed Sheeran, and like artists that I like deeply love, and I look up to them for their artistry and the way they play. And for whatever reason, just hadn't gone yet. And
well,
so
you're kind of busy.
I was pretty busy. But I just don't think that's an excuse sometimes. Okay. Like if I love live music this much, and if it's what I do for a living, live music is so important. I think now it's more important than it's ever been. And so thankfully in 2022, I finally got to go. I got surprised with tickets and went to Soldier Field, went to Chicago, and it was so stunning. I was speechless by a lot of that night. I mean, here's again another band that cares about so much about every aspect of their show. And I remember walking into the stadium, seeing there were these big like circle dance floors on the floor. And then later I learned that those are I forget even what they called them, but they're like energy dance floors, so that when like fans would jump up and down, it would generate energy to run the show.
Right, because they want to be climate friendly.
They want to be climate friendly. And
yeah.
there were solar panels that they put up all around the stadium, around Soldier Field, so that their concert was self-generating. Like they didn't use energy from anything else. It was like self-sustainable. And I was like, now that is so cool. It's so cool.
Yeah.
And here they made like a dance floor that is generating electricity for
Like, who thought
their
of that?
lights. I know. It like warms my heart. And yet I think it's beautiful when you have live music and a band who cares that much. People who care that much, who really want to craft this experience. And even like Lime scooters, like all around the venue that Coldplay would make sure there was enough so that people could get to and from in like a very climate friendly way. And so the whole atmosphere around the show, like before even the music started, I was like, I'm in. And then the production, I mean, if people have never been to a Coldplay show, I will say you need to go. It is such a one of one thing. And I don't know if they were the first people to really like endorse the wristband, the light on the wristband thing, but I know they have been a band who has gotten to be known for that.
Yeah.
And it is so magical to like be in the middle of like immersive production like that. It's one thing to have a band who just really spends time on their stage production, but to be in the middle of it, like I love immersive art. I love art exhibits where you just feel like you're inside the painting, and Coldplay feels like you're inside the painting the entire show, like you're a part of the show. And it's so magical. It really makes you feel the music in a different way. And the production for their concerts just feel larger than life. And then, you know, Chris Martin can sit on one piano in the middle of like all of that chaos, and it's like so quiet, and he's like singing Fix You or something.
Yeah.
And then everybody's crying, and it's just like, this is insane. The spectrum of like how big and larger than life something can feel, and like how small and close and intimate and like in the palm of his hands he felt. I remember there was a moment in that show, I think it was right before he played Sky Full of Stars, where he was like, okay, I know everybody watches their life in their phone screen, but for this one song, could we all just put our phone away and just like sit in this song together? I've seen a few artists do that, and yet it was just it's felt so special and such a good reminder of I am so guilty of like living my life 2 inches away from a screen. And if you look at the screen time app in my phone, it is so embarrassing because I'm on that thing all day. And I do this as my job, and still I want to video parts of shows because I'm like, yeah, but I want to relive this, and it's not the same.
No.
And so it was such a good reminder to like really set some boundaries over just like actually living your life compared to missing it all because you're trying to capture it. I don't know how many people you can fit into Soldier Field, but let's say it's like 70,000 people are like all singing along. Yeah. It's very special. It's like my form of religious experiences, you know?
Did you have a lot of those like goosebump moments?
Yeah, I just remember feeling so connected to everybody. You know, anytime I've been in like big crowds, I remember seeing Paul McCartney sing at Austin City Limits once and hearing 60,000 people sing Let It Be. And that Coldplay concert was a similar feeling. I think that hearing that many people sing together as like not 70,000 individual people, but like one unit, like one ecosystem. All of a sudden we are like one thing.
one.
I think it's the point. Like we all are one thing anyways in life. And those moments really connect to that.
Is that the only time you've seen Coldplay?
That's the only time I've seen Coldplay. But if somebody were to ask me, would I go see Coldplay again tomorrow? I'd be like 100% yes.
I would go just based on like the pictures of their show alone.
Yeah.
The confetti and the beautiful colors. And I heard that they really try to make it inclusive too, like for people who, get overwhelmed, they have spaces for them.
Again, a band who thinks of everything.
Yeah.
And yeah, they just use production so tastefully and so impactful. Yes, you're right. They have fireworks. They have so many different screens that move so many cool different ways, that they use so many cool different ways. Like they're in color and then they're in black and white and then it's a circle and then it's a rectangle and then it's all of these creative things. It's like they paint with their production in a way. Then they use confetti and fireworks and then the whole stadium is lighting up and it's very, very like full body emotional.
Yeah. That's so cool. When do you remember like when you discovered Coldplay? Was it just like a song on the radio?
Gosh, probably The Scientist was like the first song, I guess.
That's a real heart tugger, that one.
Yeah. And since then, I mean, I probably was obsessed with Yellow too. But they've always just been like the cool band. And I think it's hard for a band to always be the cool band because normally a band has like the cool stage and then they have like the ramp up to the cool stage and then the ramp down from the cool stage. But they just for some reason have found this way to like always stay cool. And they're like wearing clothing nowadays that has like paint all over them. And I'm like, I want to do that. Like I want to be like Coldplay. And so it's really admirable to watch a band like reinvent themselves constantly and always be so different and be so unique that they always have stayed like this really cutting edge and interesting, compelling, artistic thing.
I think it'd be really cool if they played the Las Vegas Sphere because they have this music. Imagine
that's so
they could really make it.
True.
I mean, maybe there are already plans. Maybe it's like
there should be plans.
They just need, but like I feel like it's in the name.
I was spending a lot of time in Vegas last year, and people were like, "What act should play the Sphere?" And I was like, "Coldplay," because their production would be wild on that huge screen. Yeah. Can you imagine? Yeah.
If you had a big production, budget. What would you take from Coldplay? Like, what would you bring into your own?
I mean, for sure being able to spread light around everybody, to have everybody like wearing light.
To feel more connected.
You can feel connected. You can like pulse with the music. I think the potential that you can, incorporate into every song is so wild. I love huge screens that move and can turn into different shapes. I think that's also, it's just such a way that you can mold a show into something so special. And I love confetti. I know that bands do it, and I know it's like, okay, here's the last song or the encore or whatever, the confetti's coming, but it is so magical.
It's just so much fun.
Okay, Go.
Oh, yes, I went to their show.
Incredible band.
Did you go to their show?
Have used confetti in a way that is like the best. Like they used confetti like 3 times in the first song, yes. and then confetti like once in the second song.
It's totally unexpected. You cannot predict it.
It's totally
and it's different colors too, like different colors.
But
I feel like
all
it goes with
hail Okay Go, because the audience is like laughing. Like you're you're in a club, and it was like
I bought a tote bag so that I could stuff confetti.
I love
take it home.
I love it. I get it. And it's like there's so much confetti in one club. You're like a tiny club. Yeah, you're like knee deep. But it was awesome. And it's like that's what live music should be about. And, and then like their last song, they have like more confetti. Yeah. And so I love bands who just get it and like use those muscles in creative ways.
Yeah. I think somebody asked at that show, they were like, how much confetti are you using? And they're like 100 pounds per show.
That's like amazing.
Because it's so unexpected.
I love it though. It's like do the unexpected thing. Like what's the most unexpected thing you could do? Yeah. That's what I want to do. Yeah. If I was given like the most insane production budget, I would want to do the most unexpected thing.
Yeah.
And probably like hang upside down and play guitar or something. I don't know. From the ceiling.
I remember getting home from that show too, and I like took off my sweatshirt and I was like it was, you took the show with you.
Yeah.
You know? Like, it was so amazing.
Yeah. And how could somebody leave that show and not be smiling?
Yes. Yeah. It was so perfect. Yeah. I'm glad you went to that show because that was one of my favorite shows of this year.
I get it.
Let's go to John Mayer.
John Mayer, Bridgestone Arena in Nashville, October 2024. I will go on record to say that I think John Mayer is like one of the most special artists that we have living right now. Maybe I'm biased because I'm a guitar player, but I think who he is as an artist and the way he writes his songs and the way he plays guitar and the way he performs and like plays his songs differently every night and like does like little melodic inflections and changes little bits of lyrics and plays a guitar solo and then goes into this like completely different space. Again, it's like why I'm like, thank God we have something like setlist.fm because
those notes.
Because yeah, you can see those notes and you can really get to learn an artist from the shows that they play because every show is different. You know, John Mayer is an artist where he'll take sign requests when he like doesn't even really remember the song.
He's like, I can get 20 seconds of it.
Yeah, he's like, I got it. And to that fan, that is like world changing. I never make signs. Okay, I never make signs. But we made a sign and we went to that solo tour and I was like, who am I? I'm making a sign. But I think the best way to be the best artist you can be is to be the best fan you can be.
For sure.
And I don't think you fully understand. I mean, I am so guilty of this. I don't think I fully understood how to be a better artist until I learned how to be a really, really great fan. And I don't think I've learned that until really late in my life, like in the past few years, honestly. But I've been really leaning into my fandom for the things that I love. And so we made a sign. And
what did the sign say? You got to tell me what it says.
It said, dude, please play Man on the Side. I love Man on the Side. And he hasn't played that song for years, like a long, long time. And in the section of the show where he takes requests, he saw the sign and he played Man on the Side. And so I will never forget that show because, again, it was just so beautiful for so many aspects of it. But the interaction of like audience to artist is so special when the artist takes it seriously. Mm-hmm. And John Mayer takes it so seriously. I respect him the utmost because he makes sure that, you know, fans who come to his shows leave feeling moved. You know, I've been to see him a bunch of times and I've been fortunate enough to get to do some things with him, and it's amazing meeting the person behind the curtain, so to speak, and getting to see that they're a human just like we all are. And I think that makes it even more magical. The fact that, okay, he is a person who puts on his pants one leg at a time. And he is a person who, when we talk about intricate guitar things, like he goes through the same things that my brain sometimes goes through. And he is that brilliant enough to put together a show that is so stunning and so special and try to connect to everybody in the audience. I've seen him a number of times, and I remember like there was this one part of a show where he saw so many signs and obviously was getting close to the part of the set where they needed to move on from like the request portion. And so he would just sing like a line of this song to a line of this song to a line of this song to a line of this song. And he like connected it all. And I was like, how does your brain do that in real time? Because obviously this was not planned. But I just think he is so special. And I think that everybody on the planet right now is like, it's a gift that we have John Mayer.
Tell me about the first time that you met him then, or you got to work with him. Like, what was that like? Because you told me that, you know, your first guitar aspirations were to be a female John Mayer, right?
Yeah, when I was little, I think, you know, I was learning Stevie Ray Vaughan and I was learning Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton. And then when I got introduced to John Mayer, I didn't even know he played guitar really. And it wasn't until like seeing him play live and seeing videos of him playing live, and I'm like, oh, this dude like fuses all of these worlds together. And my guitar heroes like Stevie and Clapton and Hendrix seem to be his guitar heroes, or at least some of them, because he would play like threads that I could connect to a lot of stuff that I'd learned and I'd heard on those records. And so I think I looked up to John so much for the way that he would fuse genres together, and he could like take influences from things that he'd learned and make them his own, and then find ways to like weave them into commercial music and like write a really meaningful pop song and then like weave really intricate musicality into it. And I found that fascinating as like a muso nerd and a guitar nerd who loves to get really intricate about numbers and music and all the things. And I'm like, oh, the world that can mix with commercial pop songs is a thing? Like that is possible? And I think he made that seem possible, you know, in a lot of ways. And so I think when I got introduced to him for the first time, and then when I really dove into a lot of his music, I was like, wow, this guy's so special. Like, he gets it. He asked me to be a part of his Silver Sky SE guitar commercial in 2022. I guess the first time I met him, actually, I had recorded my own version of Continuum. Continuum is like my desert island record. My producer at the time, when I was going into the studio to make my first album, was like, what's your favorite album? Like, what's your desert island record? And I'm like, Continuum, obviously. I can sing you every part of that record. And he's like, great, I want you to go record the whole thing. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, you have 2 weeks. I want you to recreate the entire record and hand it in to me. And so I worked around the clock and worked like 8 a.m. till 3 a.m. every day. And I knew those songs, but learning them to the point where then you can recreate them.
Not just copy them, but
it's
sort
like a
of
different
adding-
level. Yeah. And so I recreated my version of my favorite record, and never knowing that I was going to do anything with it. But then I handed my producer, Christian Bush, this hard drive and was like, okay, Christian, here you go. And I get it. I get why you asked me to do this. Like, I've learned why I love this record so much in a deeper way. And it was a really cool thing to do before I went into the studio to record my first record, because I approached it differently. I didn't want as many instruments on the songs, and I just had a different headspace going into the studio at that time. Later on, through talking about it in interviews, I ended up releasing my version of Continuum, which I never thought I was going to release whatsoever.
You thought it was just homework, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm like so embarrassed. I would have done a better job of it, I think. But I also think that there's rawness and vulnerability in just being like, yeah, this is a part of the story, and this is what happened, and this is exactly what it is, flaws and all. And so the first time I really got to meet John Mayer was when he was like, I got to meet him backstage at one of his shows, and he brought me back and he was like, thank you for recording my whole record. And I remember being completely speechless, and
you listened to it.
And yeah, I told him, I was like, all I wanted you to think is that it was cool. Like, that's all I wanted you to think. And he was so sweet and made me feel so humbled and really grateful. And then fast forward a few years later, he asked me to be a part of his Silver Sky SE commercial. And so I got to be a part of like one of the coolest things that I've ever done in my life, like with all of these badass guitar players, like John, of course, and Solis and Ariel Posen and Isaiah Sharkey and Eric Krasno, like all of these players that I look up to, and I'm like, they're all wild. Yeah, it was a very, very humbling experience to be a part of, and I got to work with him, which was really cool.
That's amazing. Those are really good shows. I feel like all of them have a very high bar.
You know, I am so grateful to live music for obviously being like the bricks of my life. It's like the yellow brick road that made me. But even now, still, I think that live music is so special and a thing that every single person on the planet needs to do, because it reminds us of the things that we need to connect with. That I think in a world where we're like so tied to this thing all the time, it sort of breaks the cycle of that.
So what shows are you looking forward to as a fan coming up? Do you have some here?
Yes, I do. Oh my gosh, I've been to see like a few really cool shows recently. Man, I've been to see so many. I'm going to see Ben Rector. I love Ben Rector so much. I think he's so talented and really excited about that show. I just bought Ed Sheeran tickets. I still have never seen Ed Sheeran, and he's on my list.
But you got tickets, so.
But I have tickets. So I'm so excited. I just got to see Bruno in Vegas, and he is unbelievable. Like, it's like how much talent can come out of one dude's body. And I never was able to see Michael Jackson perform, but when I go to see Bruno Mars, it's crazy.
There's a little bit of his magic there.
I just feel it in the way he moves his body, in the way he sings, in the way like his whole band moves. It just feels very Michael-esque in a special way. And yeah, it was a very, very cool show to see. But yeah, I'm very excited about Ed Sheeran. Yeah, I never thought that I would be going to see as many live shows as I have been, but it's like one of my favorite things to do now.
Amazing. I wanted to ask you, since you've put out EPs, what does a full album look like for you?
Yeah, so I've put out 2 full albums and 2 EPs, and right now I'm working on a full album for next year. And I felt like, as I was transitioning genres a little bit, or at least evolving from the place I was to the place where I'm going, I felt like short snippet EPs felt like baby steps moving in the direction that I was going. And now I feel like I'm ready to take a full big step, like an adult full album step. And I'm so excited about the music that I'm making for next year. And we're planning a tour. And yeah, I feel like I'm ready to make a full length now.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that you'd never made an album before. I meant this sort of the sphere into pop or into being more authentically yourself.
It just feels like I'm less afraid now. And especially coming from a world where I was like so focused on, okay, but I'm going to do this so that maybe then this could happen and then this could happen. It's more just like now I'm making the music and throwing it out there and hoping people like it, but knowing that like this music is for me and then I'm writing it because it's something that I need to live through and experience, and hopefully other people will want to listen to it too.
So I guess, how are you going to mix, since we're set list?
Yeah.
How are you gonna mix those old fan favorites in with the new music, the new era?
I'm so glad you asked this question, because this era of my career has been very eye-opening in terms of how I've been building my shows. And I think when I started, I sculpted my shows and my set list in a way that my favorite bands did, in a way that like every show was a little bit different. And then when I got into my crazy first few Nashville years, where I was playing 200 some dates a year and I was traveling all over the world and, going from like one opening set to another opening set to a headlining thing to another opening tour. And I think life was moving so fast that I didn't even have time to think about it. And it was more just like, okay, I just traveled for 12 hours and I got to this sound check, and then we go on stage, and then I have a meet and greet, and then I have to go on stage with the artist, and then I have to sign at the merch table, and then I'm going to go to bed for 2 hours, and then I'm going to wake up and go to the airport at 4 a.m. and do it all over again. Like, it just felt so rinse and repeat and Groundhog Day that's honestly how my show felt too. And I was surviving.
Yeah.
I like sometimes didn't pick up my guitar between shows because I physically didn't have time. Or I was like going from interview to this to press to radio, and my schedule was like so slammed that I didn't like craft a set list. And over the past couple years, I've just been so over living life that way. And I'm just really coming back to the place where I started from, and the bands like Metallica and like John Mayer and like Dave Matthews, and who like craft like such special, intricate shows every time, and like throw you a little Easter egg every show depending on who was in Cleveland that night or whatever. So I am completely looking at my live show in a different way, and I don't want to play with tracks anymore, and I want to be able to turn on a dime in a show,
depending on like the audience energy or
and there was such a long period of time where, you know, your show gets so insanely produced down to the minuscule that it loses that like magical ebb and flow that you can really achieve sometimes when you just let freedom take the reins. And I'm really excited about that. And I've gotten to play a few shows like that, and I just feel way more myself and way back to the little 8-year-old girl who picked up a guitar in the first place. So yeah, I have completely changed the way I'm looking at my live show again, and heading into this tour next year, I really want to craft each show so that every set list is different. And thank God for Setlist.fm.